Hey everybody, we're going to look at the presidency. And the most important thing to note is that if you're looking for the powers and the origin of the presidency, you'll find it in Article 2 of the Constitution. It's important to note how the presidency has evolved over the years. We used to have a more stronger Congress and a weaker president, but as the years went on and on and on, you'll notice that the modern era of the presidency and the expanded presidential power began around the time of Franklin Roosevelt when he was president. In terms of getting elected, presidential candidates must raise a huge amount of money to run for office. Doesn't necessarily mean that that candidate is going to win, but you'll also see the extension of the influence that super PACs now have, but we can see that influence not only on the presidential level, but the congressional level as well. You'll find in order to get to a party's national convention, you have to win the primaries and caucuses every 4 years. The official decision about who will be a nominee for a political party takes place at what we would call a party or nominating convention. In order to decide who will be president of the United States, we go through the Electoral College to do that. All but 2 states apply the unit rule, where the candidate with a plurality of popular votes in the state receives all of the electoral votes from that state. The only 2 states that do not do that are Maine and Nebraska. And yes, you can have situations where somebody wins the popular vote but loses the Electoral College. And in terms of the general election, you must win the base states in order to give yourself a chance of winning the presidency. There are a handful of competitive battleground states that we see our candidates compete in. For example, Illinois would be a base Democratic state, Utah would be a base Republican state, but our toss-up states or battleground states could be Arizona, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, and so on. In terms of our president, the president has few express powers directly written in the Constitution. As you may know from basic civics lesson, the president plays the role of chief executive of the country. The president is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The president also plays the role of chief diplomat, and has been historically done since the early days of the founding of this country. The president also plays the role of a symbolic leader of the country, or what we would call the chief of state. The president plays a role in lawmaking. The president can pass the laws. It can also veto the laws as well, and Congress does have the power to override a presidential veto with 2/3 of a vote in both houses. Presidents from all the way from the period of Washington to Trump have served as a leader of a political party, and yet they have relatively little control over the nation's economy. The president is responsible also for promoting the party's agenda. So Donald Trump would promote the Republican Party's agenda. Barack Obama would have promoted the Democratic Party's agenda. And the presidency is part of a larger executive branch, where presidents have come to rely upon the staff of the White House heavily throughout the years. Part of that executive branch is also the cabinet, where the president makes political appointments and the Senate confirms those appointments. And finally, every president has his or her own presidential style.